Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Foxworth Theory. I am your host, Eugenia Foxworth. This show is about entertainment, fashion, business, and the arts. And we are going to be talking to the movers and the shakers from all over the world. And we allow them to tell their stories. This week, our guest is the iconic public relations maverick, Angelo Ellerbee, who is considered an institution in the field of public relations over some 40 plus years. The Newark, New Jersey native has built an unmatched global legacy of excellence and double exposure media with double exposure media. The two go together with me, excellence and double exposure. From publicity to artists relations and even fashion and design, Ellerbee's visionary leadership has guided artists and record labels right to the top of the charts. From Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie to Dionne Warwick, Roberta Flack, and others with the inspiration of the late James M. Tume. Ellerbee never forgets the importance of creative excellence and media as the strategy and platform to uplift our world today. Angelo, welcome to the show.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you so very much. Very, very kind. Very kind. Thank you.
You're deserving of it. And our audience will find out shortly that that was an understatement. Now, my first question to you. Did you ever believe that you would become the icon that you are today?
I didn't necessarily believe it, but I know that I'm a child of God. I believe wholeheartedly in God. He is my inspiration, my guiding light. So within that, I knew there would be success to this level. No, but with him, everything is possible. And that's the great thing about loving God. Everything is possible. So growing up in the city of Newark was kind of difficult for me. I was raised by a single parent who was a waitress, four lovely sisters and two brothers, the youngest of the six. My mother instilled in me the faith of the Lord, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And she always said to me, I want you to be great, but I want you to grow into be greater. And then I want you to be the greatest at whatever you choose to do. So I walked that path in thinking each and every single day, even though no one knew who I was, that I was great because my mom and God had told me that I was great. And so I walked in the path of faith and greatness, never ever doubting the work of the Lord and never doubting the work of my mom. I entered into an industry that I knew absolutely nothing about, but my mother allowed me to enter into the fashion industry. At 17 years old, I moved to Paris, France. And my mother said to me very, very directly, I will give you permission to go. I don't know how you're going to get back. You have one time to call me for an emergency. And after that, you're on your own. She gave me survival tools at the beginning. She said that anyone that sat at her table must be a contributor. And that meant everybody. We all had to contribute. And so my goal in my life was to be a contributor, not just to my family, but to be a contributor to other people. everything that I learned, I felt that it was important that I give it back in sincerity and honesty and with faith and loyalty to understand the importance of sharing the worth of God's work and word. He will deliver if you deliver. He said, take a step. If you take a step, he's going to take the other step. He's going to bring you across. And so when I was in Paris, I went to Paris as a fashion model. I had horrible pictures, but I was rushing to get these things done. So I did it. I went to Paris. For the first 6 months of my career, I was in a restaurant working as a chef in a soul food restaurant by the Champs-Élysées. And I cut the collard greens, fried the fried chicken. It was a delicacy over there. And I stayed there 2.5 years. I came back able to buy my mom a house. I did all the pret-a-porters. I did all the shows. And I worked extremely hard when I came back. I didn't get a chance to graduate from high school. I wind up getting a social promotion. And then I designed 450 prom dresses for the school. Everything was about a work ethic for me. Everything was about a work ethic for me. And I always believed that I had to prove myself. Still to this day, I believe it's important that you keep proving and improving on yourself. And so after my stint in Paris and back here into the States, really confused, not knowing what I really wanted to do, I began to style for a lot of magazines, for Vogue and for Essence and Elle. And I went on in a very confused state as to what I wanted to do. And so in my community, being born and reared in the city of Newark, where culture really lacked a lot, it was my thoughts to enrich the community with culture. So I did for 17 years fashion shows in the city of Newark. But they weren't just fashion shows. I brought out the Carmen de Lavallons, the Joffrey Holders, the Imans, the Beverly Johnsons, the Peggy Dillets of the world, Alvin Ailey dancers. And I did this on the premise of educating people to be aware in culture. But more importantly, I was raising the consciousness of a disease in the 70s that was plaguing the community at large, which was AIDS and HIV. And we did fashion shows and we raised money for these fashion shows, which allowed my creativity to grow. It allowed my community to be aware of what culture was really about in terms of ballet, in terms of just elegance and style and having a vision. This went on for like 17 years. And 1 year, we would have about 2,000 to 3,000 people in attendance. And 1 year in the back, a young lady came in the dressing room and she says to me, "Hi, my name is Camille Mtume." And I said, "Oh, a pleasure meeting you." She says, "My husband is James Mtume." Well, I didn't know who James Mtume was, but in that time, he had one of the biggest records in the marketplace called Juicy Fruit. And I said, "Oh, what a pleasure." And I looked over to someone, I said, "Who's Mtume?" And then they told me who he was. And she said, "Well, would you be interested in styling my husband's next album cover, which was You, Me, and He?" And I said, "Oh, sure." I fell romantically in love with Camille. We became brothers and sisters. I introduced her to the fashion industry as it was in New York City and in New Jersey. And we became very close. So one day, James Mtume, now this is the James Mtume, the 2-time Grammy Award winner, came to me and says, "Hey, if you can do all that stuff for Camille, why don't you come and work for me and manage me?" I said, "Manage you? What do you mean manage you? I don't know how to manage you. My degree is in fashion design. I'm into clothes." He says, "How long is that going to last?" And I said, he's a little smart. He's a little smart one, huh? And so I began to work for Mtume as his manager. But the experience in the music industry, it was like going to a university. I went through the James Mtume University. And it was a hard knocks kind of school. He would send me over to Sony Music. He was signed to Sony Music each and every single day. And I was so unassured of myself. I didn't know what I was doing, but he did. And so each and every day that I would come from those meetings, he would sit down with me in a room we called the yellow room. That was the beating room. That's when you got beat up. And he let me go in each and every single time. And they would call him to me and say, You sure this is your manager? He says, yeah, I'm sure that's my manager. And he would teach me the difference in right and wrong, what to say, how to say it. And then finally, Angelo Ellerbee got it, and I became a manager, then the president of his company called IFLAN. And we went on to do fabulous things. I owe James Mtume my life. He's given me so much. He was the father that I never had, the friend that will always be embedded inside of my soul. I will always give people a chance because he gave me a chance. He always, he used to say to me, this music industry is not a baseball game. You don't get three strikes. Sometimes you get two and you're out the game. Well, I'm going to teach you how to play ball. And that he did. From the basements of his corner of the basement of his home, I would go down at each and every single not knowing what I was doing. And particularly when it came down to him getting the opportunity to be the supervisor of music over the Native Son motion picture. That was the first motion picture that Oprah Winfrey had been in. It was a Richard Wright movie, Diane Silver's production. And Angelo Ellerbee did the press. And that was my first. I went on board 200 newspapers. I didn't know what I was doing. I went on board 200 newspapers. I started to go through the bylines. Then I started to do this and I started to do that. And Tume says, I have a meeting with James Baldwin. I said, the James Baldwin? He said, yeah, you want to go? I said, yeah, I do want to go. And I went and I had the opportunities of meeting James Baldwin, working with James Baldwin. Mtume has done so much for my career. He's enriched my life in ways that I cannot even mention. And it continues. His legacy for me continues to go on as I do interviews, conduct interviews very much like yours. I believe that the message of James Mtume should continue. And I continue to tell the message of him. I continue to tell the message of God. And I continue to tell the message of belief and faith that we all have to endure the goodness of life, the goodness of God, the goodness of our teachings. It becomes really, really important.
And that
So
is
then I
what
to
you've
start
done.
yeah, well, I try to do it every single day. I will never ever win a popularity contest. I'm a businessman. And so I make decisions. And my decisions sometimes could be right, but sometimes my decisions could be wrong. But they're my decisions. I own them. No one else owns my decisions and the way that I conduct my business. So I'm celebrating 55 years in doing what I'm doing. And so I'm not saying that all things are right by Angelo. I'm fallible. We all are fallible. We all make mistakes, but we learn from the mistakes and we grow by them. And so I'm really, really happy that I had that time in that time span to grow and to become really settled within my career. From Entume, I went on to work with Michael Jackson. I went on to work with Whitney Houston and Dionne Warwick. And then I went into, I mean, there's not no genre of music that my firm has never have not worked with. From movies, I managed DMX for, oh my God, 5 years. I was the president of his label for 2.5 years. I also introduced the artist development program to Mary J. Blige. I'm very, very proud of that. And then Alicia Keys, and the list is continuous. So I think that my behind the scenes has taken full form in front to see my whole life be looked at and having some kind of appreciation. People say, well, do you believe you're unsung? I says, no, no, never, ever unsung. I believe that there's a God that keeps crowning me king for the day. And as long as he gives me the strength, and as long as he gives me the insightfulness to do what it is that I do, I am great in it, and I claim just that victory.
Well, Angelo, we're going to have to take a short break, but I would like to say that I don't need to ask questions. You have taken me on an amazing journey, and everything that you have done. I'm sure a lot of us couldn't even go close to. So, right now, let's take a short break and we will be right back with our very special guest, Angelo Ellerbee.